some of these issues that you are raising, unfortunately, you can't wish them away. You can only solve the problem that is there. If you are not solving it, then whatever explanation you give may not suffice. And I want to be sequential. Number one, I saw the responses from the Minister for Energy and the Minister for Transport. And I also saw the response from the Minister from the National Treasury. Of note is that yesterday morning, there was conflicting responses from the chair of EPRA and his CEO. Even the responses that were given by ministers, I wish they had communicated in the morning so that even if they are responding and even if they are not telling the truth, at least to align and give one side of the story. Otherwise, Kenyans may lack faith by seeing conflicting information coming from the same government. The critical issue is this one. The fuel price now currently in Kenya, just citing petrol, is 186 shillings. If you cross the border and you go to Tanzania, in this month, they are equivalent of EPRA that does the same that EPRA does. If you just check or you call anyone in Tanzania, the petrol prices in Tanzania currently is 142 shillings. The petrol prices in Uganda currently is below 182 shillings, marginally lower than Kenya. But diesel is much cheaper than Kenya, of course, because diesel in Uganda is below 170 shillings. If you go to Ethiopia, the current price of liter of petrol is maybe around 122 Ethiopian birr, which is also below 125 Kenya shillings. If you go to a place like Rwanda, Rwanda prices are also below 170 per liter of petrol. So the basic issue here is that the fuel prices in Kenya have been high, not because of global issues, but because of exorbitant levies and taxes. And of note is that the government actually introduced a levy of 7 shillings last year. And that is why, even when global oil prices went down, Kenya never noted, because that is the period when the government then inserted the 7 shillings as part of the fuel levy. I also, because I read some of the responses, because I was really looking forward to getting the truth. It is good that the Minister for Energy and the Minister for Transport restricted their responses to the issue at hand. But it was very disappointing to see the Minister for the National Treasury trying diversionary tactics. I want to remind my brother that he is no longer the chatterbox he used to be. Now he holds a position with responsibility. And the docket where he holds and which he is the minister or cabinet secretary is an empirical docket. It is not a theoretical docket. His responses always need to be quantitative. You can't give tales on issues about figures because figures are glaring and they are stubborn. Now, the question or the answer that we need from them, one, it is there in the response of the minister or the cabinet secretary for energy that there was actually an introduction of 7 shillings last year. So the question is simple. Where is that money? Now, in their responses, they tried to justify that this money that was borrowed, that was introduced, was actually used as collateral to take debt, to take a loan from our local banks. Now, that loan is to be paid by Kenyans for the next 7 years. For the next 7 years. The question we are asking are simple. By the maturity of the 7 years, how much money will Kenyans have paid for that loan? That is number one. Secondly, why is this money not being treated or included as part of the national debt? Why the urgency of hiding this loan in a separate book from the book that is known by our leaders and from the book of loans and debt and obligations that is known by Kenyans. What are you hiding? The other thing, is this debt sovereign guaranteed? Is it guaranteed by the sovereign called Kenya? The last thing that I want to bring about, and the reason why I call this a scandal, Kenyans are borrowing now, or are made to borrow, 175 billion Kenya shillings. But after 7 years, Kenyans will be paying an extra 100 billion to the banks on top of the 175 billion. What is the urgency for? And in their responses, I saw they are trying to justify construction of roads. Construction of roads in Kenya is not an invention that has been done yesterday. All the regimes have been building tarmac roads. And no Kenyan has a problem when it comes to development, and especially the building of tarmac roads. The problem is that there has never been any other time that Kenyans are borrowing illegally and coming to Kenyans to explain using construction of roads. We have always had roads, but we have never been in an abyss where we are borrowing illegally for the same purpose. And I want to request, when we hear these issues, we are hearing them because all of us as Kenyans are stakeholders. If Kenyans ikienda pahali baya, inaharibu sisi wote. Na ya mwisho, these banks that are a part and parcel of this scandal, I want to ask them, when you are lending this money, 175 billion Kenya shillings, what is coming there as your collateral? In case there is a government policy that abolishes the 7 shillings. Because the 7 shillings is not added through a referendum. It is only through a gazette notice from the minister. If there is a new minister tomorrow and they do the reverse, so what will the banks be holding? So what we need to do, and what I beseech all of us, and especially those with the responsibility in leadership positions, let us not continue to defend the indispensable. It is glaring. And if it's not glaring, recognize this debt the way it ought to be recognized. Because no one will accuse you of borrowing illegally. I saw another response talking about a special purpose vehicle. And a lot of kizungu mingi. Kenya Roads Board is a fully owned entity of the national government. And there is no way you can detach financial obligations of Kenya Roads Board from that of the sovereign called Kenya. And therefore, even if you want to do some financial engineering, it is important for us to do it within the PFM Act. And it is also important for us as we make decisions not to overburden Kenyans just for us to get the political utility today. The 175 billion Kenya shillings, the cost is an extra 100 billion. We need to ask ourselves as Kenyans, is it worth it? Kwani kuna siku Wakenya hawatahitaji barabara? Then hii bilioni ya nini? 2027 Wakenya watahitaji barabara. 2028 Wakenya watahitaji barabara. So hii mambo ya kukibiza Wakenya na kuongeza deni zaidi ya deni, na hiyo deni kuwekwa kado ya madeni, I think that is what is basically suboptimal when it comes to prudent management of public resources.